Welcome to Undaunted, bringing into the news untold stories. I am Star Smart. Let's begin. When we thought La République du Cameroon's president is the world's longest president in corruption, we see an older brother in that line in Equatorial Guinean President Teodoro Obiang Nguema Mbasogo. Is this presidential corruption virus endemic to these regions, or are there more untold stories that will resurface in our upcoming bulletins? Well, time would be the revealer. Over the years, many Anglophone journalists at the state media house, CRTV, have resigned from their jobs for reasons mostly associated with unfair treatment and sometimes outright wickedness. Sidelined Anglophones in the media sector have started crying over marginalization now. The media is created to be the eye of the blind and the voice of the dumb. But if you, who is in the media, are unable to tell the truth, or worse off, do not see the truth in the first place, then there is a major crisis to the many who depend on you for sight. The Anglophone dual secretaries of state in ministries are sidelined on decision making for their Francophone bosses to make those decisions. The Anglophone dual secretary generals in ministries answer yes, sir, to those Francophone bosses. Instead of crying over marginalization in appointments, as has been the recent case in the media sector, they have been advised to abandon fence sitting, hypocrisy, and engage fully in the liberation struggle to free the home they really belong to. Whether they agree to or not, Undaunted tonight has a series of truths to bring to you in the course of our news. So stay tuned as we get you the prime headlines.
And these are the prime headlines for today. We'll start with the story of General Talk and Do as he brandishes new RPG-7, fruit of the National War Draft. That's if you drafted. Also today, Colonel La Republic du Cameroon military sends two Amazones unjustly to early grave. Illegal Konak releases buyer's anti-corruption report is a story we will be looking at today. Now, the marginalization continues as Anglophones get sidelined in key positions. Well, of a truth, the marginalization is the talk of the day. Also, it was a bloody weekend for La Republic de Cameroon as Undaunted gathered that four simultaneous attacks on colonial La Republic de Cameroon military targets in Kumbo, Bamenda, Bakassi, and Manfi. And today, across Africa, Equatorial Guinea elections, 43 years repressing the voice Very sincerest apologies for that technical break in transmission, but we are here right back with the headlines. Well, I did mention earlier that today on Undaunted, we will be looking at General Talk and Do as he brandishes the new RPG-7 fruit of the National War Draft, if you ask me. Also, Colonial La Republic to Cameroon military sends two Ambazonians unjustly to early grave. Illegal Connect releases buyer's anti-corruption report. And also today, the marginalization continues as Anglophones get sidelines in key positions. Well, the truth is, marginalization is the talk of the day. It was a bloody weekend for La Republic du Cameroon as Undaunted gathered that four simultaneous attacks on colonial La Republic du Cameroon military targets in Kumbo, Bamenda, Bakassi, and Mamfe. Across Africa, we will take a look at Equatorial Guinea's election as 43 years repressing the voice of the people continues. Let's get the news.
The media greatly influences society. They inform people about what is happening. It permeates people's lives by creating their own criteria and opinions. In this way, the media moves the masses, creating different social movements.
For over 60 years, the people of Ambazonia were deprived of such privileges. The privilege to enhance their own criteria and opinion. They have suffered cultural genocide for 6 long decades, but not in this age and not with Undaunted ABC Amber News on board.
You must understand that wars are fought and won in the media. The speed of the revolution on Ambazonia's quest for freedom cannot be explained without highlighting the diligent use of the media.
Franco-Cameroon colonizers, among other strategic moves, weaponized the media against Ambazonia for so long, and they continue to do so even today. The question would be, how much do the oppressed people of Ambazonia need to counter the media rage?
Indeed, how much more is required to stop the genocide? The carnage in Ambazonia didn't start today. In 1961, 1972, 1984, 1992, Ambazonians were slaughtered in huge numbers and help was not forthcoming. Why? Because the oppressor was the piper in the media.
The good news is we have what it takes to dictate the pace.
Right now, ABC Amber TV is taking advantage of the wonders of multimedia aggressively
to inform the misinformed and disinformed with Undaunted and other revolutionary programs bringing it to the news untold stories.
Most importantly, to win the media war by taking ABC Amber TV into every multimedia platform.
In a word, where the importance of storytelling can never be overemphasized, Amazonians has to tell her own story, not the other way round.
And like we say it always, Amazonia must narrate her story accurately. We can do this together, you know, right? You are just a click away. Visit our website at www.abcambertv.com, and the steps are quite simple.
With just a click on the website, you can become a club member with so many benefits.
You can also make a one-time donation, advertise and showcase your goods and services at the marketplace on the website.
That was easy, right? You're welcome on board.
And thank you for opting for the winning team.
The people of Southern Cameroon have from time immemorial demonstrated and practiced peace in all their endeavors of calling on colonial ruler of La Republique du Cameroon Paul Biya to order concerning the marginalization of Southern Cameroon's Ambazonia. Now, this is evident from the nationwide outing in Southern Cameroon in 2016. In 2016, the entire people of southern Cameroon's Amazonia staged a nationwide demonstration against the imperialist tendency of the French culture into Amazonian schools and courts. During the demonstrations that were peaceful, all what the people of southern Cameroon's Amazonia had was just a peace plant, which was signifying that though provoked and marginalized, character cannot just be changed overnight. The change from carrying peace plants to arms, passing through rubber guns and sticks, only came when there was an imperative need for self protection after Biya declared war in January 2017. Today, the Amazonian liberation fighters pride themselves with sophisticated armed weapons. In a recent video, one of the generals brandished an RPG 7, thanking the Dr. Sako led interim government for provision. Did Paul Biya think that declaring war means winning it? Well, fellow Amazonians, this is where we will begin the full briefings of Undaunted tonight. Star Smart is here as always. Good evening, Star.
Good evening, Onyi. Good evening, fellow Amazonians. Well, in a video captured on the 19th of November 2022, General Token Du of Bui County appreciates the war draft, a strategy put in place by the interim government. In the video, the rather more motivated general presents a new sophisticated weapon, a fruit of the national war draft of President of the interim government, Dr. Sako, an RPG-7. The RPG-7 is a portable, reusable, unguided, shoulder-launched anti-tank rocket-propelled grenade launcher. There is a video of it here. As you can hear for yourself in that video, they really appreciated the support of the elite of Bui in the diaspora for their support to the home front fighters. And General Token do pledge loyalty to the interim government. The fighters of Bui, now under the leadership of General Token do, have been very resilient in defending the homeland and preventing the advancement of La République du Cameroon forces.
We the people, ABC Amber TV, Ambazonia Broadcasting Corporation. The voice of the voiceless, the voice of Ambazonia, connecting the world from Africa with untold stories, Africa's best.
Extrajudicial killings has been and is still an act being perpetrated on the people of southern Cameroon. Ambazonia by the colonial La Republic de Cameroon soldiers deployed to southern Cameroon. Being unable to face the Ambazonian liberation fighters, they now vent their frustration on the innocent population. Two innocent men have been assassinated by the colonial La Republic du Cameroon military and their bodies dumped on the streets of Babanki in the northern zone of Ambazonia. For how long are we going to continue to keep losing lives?
Two young Amazonians have been killed Sunday, November 20th, 2022, just yesterday, and their remains have been thrown on the streets of Babanki by the colonial La Republique du Cameroon military. Captured in the reports by the whistleblower Nzui Manto, these boys were not Amazonian fighters because, according to those who knew them in Babanki, these boys were killed by the colonial La Republique du Cameroon military after asking them questions about the whereabouts of Amazonian liberation fighters. Quote, La Republique du Cameroon soldiers broke into a home in Babanki in the early hours of Sunday. Two young boys who were there were forced out of the house and asked questions about the whereabouts of the fighters, where they were hiding, and the two men gave a unanimous answer that we do not know where the Amazonian liberation fighters are coming from, nor where they live. Dissatisfied with this answer, the colonial military then executed them by putting a bullet in their head, and this was reported by Nzui Mantu. Now, this is a sign that probably in the long run, every house will be raided and these same questions will be asked and killed for no just cause.
It is really ironic for a corrupt administration like that of La Republique du Cameroon to shamelessly put in place a committee to fight corruption. Now, this so called Anti Corruption Committee of La Republique du Cameroon, CONAC, is not only corrupt in itself, it is bent on protecting the same corrupt authorities that gave them the mandate. Since the illegal CONAC is powerless before top-ranking La Republique du Cameroon government officials, their job description, therefore, is to go after the common man and incriminate them in a way to justify their existence. Can this illegal body called CONAC bite the fingers feeding her?
Well, corruption reports by La Republique du Cameroon, so-called Anti-Corruption Committee, CONAC, punishes 518 people, but not those expected by Cameroonians. And according to the illegal National Anti-Corruption Commission, CONAC, 518 people have been punished for corruption crimes in Cameroonian, and an impressive figure, but not satisfactorily to Cameroonians as known economic corrupt officials are still on the loose. Well, according to the report, illegal CONAC states that 518 agents were dismissed in 2021 as part of the fight against corruption in Cameroon, and these sanctions by CONAC were taken within the colonial ministerial departments, public and parastatal companies. Now, this report has only sanctioned small office agents while perpetrators of serious economic crimes are freed.
Even with 518 dismissed, Cameroonese still have the impression that nothing is being done to fight corruption and other economic crimes in Cameroon. For instance, former colonial minister of water and energy Atangana Kwane Basil was released from prison on instructions from the colonial head of state after being charged for embezzlement. Those who siphon money meant for the construction of the Olembe Stadium are also free and move freely in Cameroon without being disturbed. Faced with all these files, just to name but these few, it is clear that Kanak is only interested in small fishes while big ones have no problems.
Over the years, many Anglophone journalists at the state media house CRTV have resigned from their jobs for reasons usually associated with unfair treatment. And not just reasons of unfair treatments, most times there are also reasons of outright wickedness. And since the creation of this national taxpayers broadcasters 37 years ago, it is only in the past 2 years that a bona fide Anglophone, Wongibe Emmanuel, rose to the position of Deputy General Manager, and general managers, as in all strategic state corporations in Cameroon, being reserved for Francophone masters.
Now, before Wangibe, the CRTV General Manager and Director General Manager were all in the hands of Francophones, while Anglophones managed the crops. The person who represented the Anglophones at the top all these long years was one Francis Witty, a bilingual Francophone from Bangete, same as Felix Mbayu, who is representing Yaoundé region. Now, this is the reason why some household names have gradually disappeared from the airwaves and some have died under mysterious circumstances. The most recent appointments have not made things better for the remaining Anglophones minority still working in the house. See what post Anglophones were given.
Now, tribalism, nepotism, and favoritism are some of the words used by the English community to describe these unequal appointments made in the House and its associate organs. Once upon a time, Cameroon Tribune had complete English and French versions. The current bilingual version is virtually a French paper. On November 17, 2022, after the 54th extraordinary board meeting with the Minister of Communication, changes were made within the state broadcaster with the long decried plight of Anglophones not considered. English-speaking journalists such as Esther Kima, Ashu Nyeti, Winiyawoko Motale have been made editorialists, while others were simply declared senior reporters such as Benen Buma Ghana, Veronica Benguela, Albert Njiembode, and Charles Ebounet after several years spent in service. Strangely, the French-speaking journalists do not have to wait half that long to get this recognition, and some of such people are Abubakar Abo, who is not a trained journalist, and Regine Guedlis Labuda, who was recruited in late 2016 and is already made senior reporter, whereas her editor-in-chief is still not one. Other English-speaking reporters were simply rewarded with dormant posts, whereas more strategic posts have been occupied by the center-south majority. Meanwhile, at Scape, Francophones vowed to see an Anglophone board chairman only under dead bodies. Anti-Anglophone sentiments are not hidden here. Chop Samuel, the contested board chairman, laments the Francophones don't want any Anglophone to head them. They are doing everything to frustrate him, he says, and he adds that the Ousmane team had mounted a case file against me with allegations of embezzlement charges, which was thrown out of court as unfounded.
Now he regretted that the people were against him simply because he is an Anglophone, but stressing his point that another Anglophone, John Moma, was at CAP only for 6 months and was chased out and even banned for life from the corporation. These xenophobic sentiments have been a stock in trade at the Cameroon Copyright Society for Audiovisual and Photography, abbreviated in French as CAP. Before the La Republic, the Cameroon state authorities tried to sugarcoat Ambazonian enslavement with his their ensemble slogan, Francophone is CAP, have been fighting against the Vier ensemble living together. At ASCAP, one John Moma was booted out with ease by the Francophone clique, and since Chop Samuel came in, the same Francophones have never collaborated with him. Rather, they plot one coup after another to topple him in spite of his commendable efforts.
Anglophone's marginalization is as old as the fake union with La République du Cameroon. Joa, an elected premier, was marginalized by Ahijo. Mbile was hushed down by Ahijo for trying to ask about oil money. Fonlon was refused pension. No Ambazonian has headed Sonara producing on home front. Ambazonians are deputies everywhere, even where they are more competent. Anglophones are secretaries of states and ministries, and their francophone bosses sideline them on decision making. Anglophones are secretary generals in ministries where they answer yes to their francophone bosses. Instead of crying that they are being marginalized in appointments, let them take the bull by the horns, abandon fence sitting and hypocrisy, and engage fully in the liberation struggle to free homeland. Crying now will change nothing.
Now, in 1990, whether Anglophones supported the SDF or not, Francophones considered every Anglophone as SDF. The same today, whether you support the struggle or not. Francophones know that every Anglophone is Ambazonia, so better join the fight because you will not be spared when the worst comes to the worst.
We the people, ABC Amber TV, Ambazonia Broadcasting Corporation. The voice of the voiceless, the voice of Ambazonia, connecting the world from Africa with untold stories, Africa's best.
Undaunted has gathered that four simultaneous attacks on colonial La Republic du Cameroon military targets in Kumbo, Bamenda, Bakassi, and Amanfi local government areas was a bloody weekend. Field report says 23 colonial La Republic du Cameroon soldiers were killed, 12 wounded, and armored cars damaged.
Now, these exploits, Undaunted said, happened Thursday and Friday, carried out by Unity warriors, Bafut 7 Kata, Sokadef, and Ambazonian restoration fighters, all united to face one common enemy for the first time, La Republique du Cameroon and its colonial occupier military, who attacked school children in Nkwin and Mutengene last week. The unity among Ambazonian fighting groups is yielding great results as united Ambazonian fighting groups launched another major offensive against La Republique du Cameroon security facilities off Bia's military torture chambers at the Bamenda Airport military base.
Undaunted equally learned that another Amazonian fighting force targeted a military owner of a bar in Bamenda who was gunned down by a unit of ghost fighters last Thursday. The coordinated attacks by United Amazonian Fighting Forces to free Amazonia is proving to be extremely difficult for French Cameroon soldiers to fight them. A certain local coordination committee and activist group that monitors violence and rights abuses in Cameroon based in Bamenda local government area admitted that Amazonian fighters shot down armored cars from a distance using RPGs, blowing off these armored cars loaded with military personnel heading to Kumbu local government area and Ngokentuja County last Friday.
And also, reports say that the three coordinated attacks in Bakassi, Bamenda, Manfei began before midnight on Thursday and ended Friday morning, just 2 days after Bia's regime conceded to French ambassador that his forces have been unable to quell the Amazonian fighters, making things extremely difficult for them to win the war. His military is bogged down in Bamenda local government area and unable to crush the Amazonian fighters in Bamenda and its suburbs. Now, the Amazonian fighters joined offensive in Manfei and Bakassi, targeted an artillery training school illegally set up by dictator Bia's regime military. A compound of the military intelligence and an army checkpoint in Bakassi was also brought down by Amazonian fighters, killing 6 soldiers with many wounded. Well, moving on with our story tonight into the Equatorial Guinea. When we thought La Republique du Cameroon's president is the world's longest president in corruption, we see an older brother in that line in Equatorial Guinean President Teodoro Obiang Nguema Mbasogo. Let's take a quick look at this president from Wikipedia's perspective. It says Teodoro Obiang Nguema Mbasogo is an Equatorial Guinean politician and former military officer who has served as the second president of Equatorial Guinea since August 1979, and he is the longest serving president of any country ever and the second longest consecutively serving current non-royal national leader in the entire world. Born 5th June 1942, age 80 years, Akokan, Equatorial Guinea, spouse Constantia Mangwe, that born 1968, and children Teodoro Nguema Obiang Mangwe. Presidential term 3rd August 1979 to date, and siblings Amengo Ondo Nguema, office chairperson of the African Union Party, Democratic Party of Equatorial Guinea.
In 1968, Spanish Guinea gained independence and became the Republic of Equatorial Guinea with Francisco Marquez Nguema as president. Rights groups have labeled the country's two presidents, Francisco Marquez Nguema and President Teodoro Obiang Nguema, as some of the worst rights abusers in Africa. The Spanish, French, and Portuguese-speaking country discovered vast oil reserves in 1996, but much of the 1.4 million population has not benefited from this, with poverty still rampant.
Well, on Sunday, Equatorial Guinea held its elections, and in which the world's longest standing president, which is the person of Teodoro Obiang Nguema, he sought to extend his 43rd year authoritarian rule marked by alleged right abuses and corruption. He was present. Now, the West African oil producing nation, Equatorial Guinea, of around 1.5 million, has had only two presidents since independence from Spain in 1968. Obiang ousted his uncle Francisco Macias Nguema in a coup in 1979. The 80-year-old Obiang, always elected with over 90% of votes in polls that international observers have questioned. He is vying for a sixth term against two other candidates, Andres Esono Ondo and Buenaventura Monsu Asumu.
Now, although the tiny Gulf of Guinea nation had seen major investments in infrastructure, critics say under Obiang, oil wealth has lined the pockets of his entourage, who flash luxury lifestyles while most of the population live in poverty. Oil and gas production accounts for around three-quarters of revenue in the OPEC member states, but output has dwindled in recent years to around 93,000 barrels per day from around 160,000 barrels per day in 2015 due to maturing fields. Obiang is also accused of Muslim dissent and freedom of expression. The government has denied the accusations. Protests are mostly forbidden. Media is heavily controlled, and it is not uncommon for political opponents to be arbitrarily arrested and tortured, says rights group. Intimidation has increased in the run-up to the polls. Activists say with authorities targeting civil society groups and critics of the regime.
Speaking of intimidation, in September, security forces raided the headquarters of a banned opposition party, the only one with a seat in parliament, and detained over 100 of its members. Before the election yesterday, human rights activist Tutu Alicante told Reuters this particular report. Can you imagine this? When you mention countries without laws, boundaries, or restrictions, at least the world knows to now.
Now, this country is making terrible headlines on the news sure ended. Repression ahead of the vote has offset efforts by Obiang to improve his image abroad. The latest in a move to abolish the death penalty earlier this year. He says people will cast the votes the government expects them to because you cannot freely speak up your mind in Equatorial Guinea. Another says he is washing his face in front of the international community, said Amnesty International senior campaigner for West Africa, Mata Kolome. Alleged corruption has also tainted Obiang's tenure despite several pledges to increase transparency.
Well, the president has placed his family members in political seats and has his son Teodoro Nguema Obiang Mangwe for vice president, a father and son rulership. And observers see the son as a potential successor, even though records has it that he was convicted for embezzlement by a French court in 2020. Assets that foreign power says he bought was ill-gotten. He was bought with ill-gotten gains include a crystal-covered glove won by Michael Jackson and an armored Rolls-Royce limousine and a yacht. Both father and son have consistently denied wrongdoings.
Now, here is the catch. If re-elected, Obiang will face new challenges. The economy was hit by COVID-19, and although the war in Ukraine has boosted demand for non-Russian oil, It has also brought a sharp rise in food prices. The opposition does not stand a chance. Alin Sante said he's going to do whatever it takes not to leave power. The president has a strong grip on the oil rich nation, with family members in key government roles, by the way. The elections are merely cosmetic, Professor Anne Lucia Sarr told the BBC.
Well, nothing will change, is what Professor Sa, who specializes in politics and authoritarian African regimes at the University Institute of Lisbon, said, adding that she was sure Obiang will be elected with more than 95% of the vote. This sentiment is also echoed by activist Tutu Alicante, who told Reuters news agency that you cannot freely speak up your mind in Equatorial Guinea, and the opposition does not stand a chance. He continued to say that he is going to do whatever it takes not to leave power for the president.
Now, from these, you have seen that political opposition is barely tolerated and severely hampered by the lack of a free press, as all broadcast media is either owned outrightly by the government or controlled by its allies. President Obiang, who has previously denied rights abuses and election rigging, is seeking to clean up his international reputation. In September, the government abolished the death penalty in a move which was praised by the UN. But poverty has not stopped being their political weapon against the masses. President Obiang has managed to maintain his grip on the power, probably due to controlling the rules of the political game. Professor Sass said, adding that he uses the poverty of the nation as a political weapon. Meanwhile, electoral laws were conceived to make sure Obiang will never lose power, she commented. Now, the country has a history of what critics call fraudulent election results. Officials said President Obiang won more than 97% of the votes in presidential elections in December 2002. Opposition candidates withdrew from the poll, citing fraud and irregularities. Similar results were also reported in the 2009 and 2016 elections.
There have also been accusations of corruptions leveled against the Obiang regime after his son Theodorin Obiang was fined in the French court for using public money to fund a luxurious life in the European nation. Mr. Obiang's French assets have been seized after that, and Vice President Obiang, his son actually, has denied any wrongdoing. President Obiang himself has also previously denied allegations of corruption. One that is already this glaring, and they still deny. What do we expect more? Well, you see the patterns of La Republique du Cameroon painted out in its neighboring country, or do we say the patterns of Equatorial Guinea played out on La Republique du Cameroon? Well, the case of the Equatorial Guinea is just another playout of what La Republique du Cameroon has been doing for decades. It's as though these two presidents are in a competition of being the world's oldest terrible presidential leaders at the expense of the well-being of their citizens. It is really sad and worse to think the hands of their citizens are tied. Well, that is if they really are tied.
We the people, ABC Amber TV, Ambazonia Broadcasting Corporation. The voice of the voiceless, the voice of Ambazonia, connecting the world from Africa with untold stories, Africa's best.
And with that report, we've come to the end of Undaunted tonight. But before we go, here is a major highlight of our stories today.
General Tolkien brandishes new RPG-7, fruit of the national war draft. Colonial La Republique du Cameroon military sends 2 Ambazonians unjustly to early grave. Illegal Konak releases biased anti-corruption reports.
Tonight on Undaunted, we told you that the marginalization continues as Anglophone gets sidelined in key positions. Also, it was a bloody weekend for La Republique du Cameroon as Undaunted gathered that four simultaneous attacks on colonial land republic, the Cameroon military targets in Kumbo, Bamenda, Bakassi, and Mafe. And also, we told you that across Africa, Equatorial Guinea election is counting 43 years repressing the voice of the people. And that was it for tonight on Undaunted, bringing to the news on church stories. On behalf of my co-anchor Smart and the entire Undaunted crew, we say thank you for tuning in.
We'll leave you with ABC Amber Images. Good night and God bless you.